So guys, the Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre match is almost confirmed for WrestleMania 42. Yes, you heard that right. The update has officially come out, and it's creating a lot of buzz right now. According to reports from WWE is currently preparing new plans for Roman Reigns heading into WrestleMania 42. If we look back at the ending of Survivor Series and the face-off we witnessed between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, it really seemed at that time that WWE was building toward Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes Part 3 at WrestleMania 42. But now things appear to be changing. The moment WWE placed the undisputed title on Drew McIntyre, the picture started to look very different. At this point, it strongly feels like Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre could be the match we see at WrestleMania 42, with the undisputed WWE Championship on the line. On top of that, another update has now surfaced, once again stating that WWE has new creative plans lined up for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 42. So the big question is, could this new plan be that Drew McIntyre will defend his championship against the OTC Roman Reigns on the grand stage of WrestleMania 42? Now I want to know your thoughts. How do things look to you right now? Which match do you think we are heading toward at WrestleMania 42? Make sure to share your opinion. That's all for today's video. I hope this video gave you some valuable information. If it did, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The chaos that erupted on WWE Raw was the one that WWE fans didn't see coming. It all began at 5:15 p.m. The conference room was packed beyond capacity. Media members from every major sports and entertainment outlet imaginable crowded into every available space, cameras at the front of the room. The energy was different today, charged with an electricity that went beyond the typical press conference atmosphere. Everyone in attendance could sense that something monumental like a low hum, with journalists exchanging the WWE logo, flanked by other executives whose names and titles blurred into the background because everyone knew who the real story was today. The chief content officer of WWE looked composed, professional, every inch the executive who had transformed the company's creative direction over the past years. But there was something else in his expression, a barely contained excitement that suggested he knew exactly how massive the bombshell he was about to drop would be. His hands were folded calmly on the table in front of him, but those who knew him well could see the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set with determination and anticipation. The room gradually fell silent as Triple H leaned forward towards became the only sound, creating a staccato rhythm that underscored the gravity of the moment. He cleared his throat, and even that segment, every promo, every social media post, trying to piece together what we have planned for the biggest event of the year. Confirm what will undoubtedly be one of the most significant matches in WrestleMania history. At WrestleMania 42, Drew McIntyre will face Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. The room exploded. The carefully maintained professional atmosphere shattered in an instant as journalists began shouting questions, cameras flashed in a blinding. Triple H sat back slightly, that small smile growing wider as he watched the chaos his announcement had created. He had expected this reaction. This announcement were staggering, and everyone in that room underlined, who had vanquished every challenger placed before just another match being added to the WrestleMania card. This was the kind of dream match that fans had been fantasizing about for years, debating in online forums, creating fantasy booking scenarios happening at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all. Sent shockwaves through not just that conference room but through the entire wrestling world simultaneously as the news began. Quiet, though it took several moments for the room to settle down enough for him to continue speaking. I understand you all have questions. He's more focused. Roman Reigns has been the dominant force in WWE for over 3 years now. His championship stars, he's defeated everyone we've put in front of him. The bloodline has been the most compelling storyline in professional wrestling during this entire period, and Roman has been at the absolute center of it all. The respect in Triple H's voice was evident. Despite being the one making the announcement that could potentially end Reigns' reign, there was genuine admiration for what the tribal chief had accomplished. But every great champion, every historic reign, eventually needs to face its ultimate test. Every era needs a challenger who represents not just a threat, but the threat. Someone who has the credibility, the skills, the size, and the story to make people believe that the impossible might actually be possible. Triple H's eyes seemed to gleam as he continued. Drew McIntyre is that man. His journey back to the top of WWE is one of the most remarkable stories in our company's history. He was here, he was released, and instead of giving up or becoming bitter, he went out into the world and became one of the best professional wrestlers on the planet. He dominated everywhere he went. He evolved, he improved, he became a complete performer in every sense of the word. The narrative was one that wrestling fans knew well, but hearing it articulated by Triple H in this context gave it added weight. Drew McIntyre's story was indeed remarkable, a tale of redemption and perseverance that resonated with anyone who had ever faced setbacks and had to find the strength to overcome them. His initial run with WWE had ended unceremoniously, with many writing him off as someone who would never reach the heights that his early push had suggested was possible. But he had proven everyone wrong, systematically rebuilding his career and his reputation until WWE had no choice but to bring him back. When Drew returned to WWE, he wasn't the same performer who had left, Triple H explained. He was harder, tougher, more focused. He was a man on a mission to prove that the first time around wasn't a failure, but rather a learning experience. And he did exactly that. He won the Royal Rumble. He won the WWE Championship at Wrestlemenia. He became the face of this company during one of the most challenging periods in our history. It was true that Drew had won his first WWE Championship during the pandemic era, performing in empty arenas without the roar of live crowds to validate his victories. Some had suggested that this diminished his accomplishment, that winning the title in the Performance Center wasn't the same as winning it in front of 70,000 fans. But those who truly understood the business recognized that performing in that environment was perhaps even more difficult, requiring a different kind of energy and commitment to make matches compelling without audience feedback. Drew has proven time and time again that he belongs in the conversation as one of the very best in the world, Triple H continued. But there's been one mountain he hasn't climbed yet. There's been one test he hasn't passed. And that's defeating Roman Reigns on the grandest stage of them all for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. The framing was perfect, casting this as Drew's ultimate challenge while simultaneously positioning Roman as the final boss that needed to be defeated. It was classic wrestling storytelling, creating a narrative that casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts alike could immediately understand and invest in. The hero seeking to slay the dragon. The challenger trying to dethrone the king. The unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. A journalist in the front row raised his hand, and Triple H nodded in acknowledgement. What made now the right time for this match? The reporter asked. Why WrestleMania 42 specifically? Triple H considered the question for a moment before responding. Timing in this business is everything. You can have two incredible performers, you can have a match that people want to see, but if the timing isn't right, if the story isn't properly built, it won't have the impact it deserves. We've been building toward this moment for longer than most people realize. Every interaction between Drew and Roman, every time their paths have crossed, every statement they've made about each other, has been laying the groundwork for this confrontation. He was right, of course. Looking back through recent WWE programming, there had been subtle threads being woven, moments that seemed insignificant at the time but now appeared as clear foreshadowing. A stare down here, a verbal exchange there, social media barbs that had seemed like simple promotion, but were actually building the foundation for this massive clash. WrestleMania is where the biggest stories reach their conclusions or their most significant chapters, Triple H elaborated. It's where legends are made, where history is written, where moments are created that fans remember for the rest of their lives. Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed championship is exactly the kind of match that belongs on that stage. It's exactly the kind of moment that WrestleMania was created to showcase. Another hand shot up, another question called out. Has this match been made official? Have both competitors agreed to the terms? A knowing smile crossed Triple H's face. Both Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns are aware of this announcement. Both men have made it clear that they want this match. Roman has said repeatedly that he welcomes all challengers, that he'll face anyone and everyone who thinks they can take his titles. Drew has been vocal about believing he's the one man who can end Roman's reign. So yes, this match is official. It's happening at Wrestlemenia 42. The confirmation sent another wave of excited murmuring through the room. This wasn't speculation or potential booking anymore. This was locked in, guaranteed, a sure thing. Fans would have months to anticipate it, to debate who would win, to imagine the possibilities of how the match might unfold. Can you speak to what this means for the Bloodline storyline? Another journalist asked. Will this match have any stipulations regarding their involvement? Triple H's expression became more guarded. I'm not going to reveal every detail of how this story will play out between now and WrestleMania. Part of the journey is watching it develop week by week on our programming. What I will say is that the Bloodline has been a central element of Roman's championship reign, and it would be naive to think they won't factor into this story somehow. But Drew McIntyre is not someone who backs down from a fight, regardless of the numbers game. He's proven that throughout his career. The answer was perfectly crafted to maintain intrigue while acknowledging the elephant in the room. The Bloodline had been involved in nearly every major Roman Reigns match for years, with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman playing crucial roles in maintaining Roman's dominance. The question of whether Drew would have to overcome the entire faction or if there would be some stipulation to neutralize their advantage was one that would drive speculation and discussion for weeks. What does this mean for the other championship? Someone called out. Will Roman defend both titles, or will they be separated before WrestleMania? The match is for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, Triple H stated firmly. Roman has held both titles, unified them, and defended them as one championship. That's what will be on the line at WrestleMania. Winner takes all. If Drew wins, he becomes the undisputed champion. If Roman retains, his historic reign continues. The stakes couldn't be higher. This wasn't a match where the loser could claim a moral victory or where both competitors could come out looking strong. This was all or nothing, with the most prestigious prize in professional wrestling hanging in the balance. For Drew, it was the opportunity to cement his legacy as one of the all-time greats. For Roman, it was about proving that his reign of dominance was far from over. A reporter from a major sports network stood up. There's been talk about Drew's recent character evolution, about him showing a more aggressive, almost desperate side in recent months. How do you see that playing into this match? Triple H nodded appreciatively at the question. Drew has shown layers to his character that make him more interesting and more dangerous than ever before. He's not just the smiling babyface who waves a sword around anymore. He's evolved into someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. That edge, that willingness to cross lines he might not have crossed before, makes him a legitimate threat to Roman in ways that other challengers haven't been. It was true that Drew's character had undergone significant development in recent months. The frustration of coming close to championship gold multiple times, but falling short had manifested in a harder edge, a meaner streak that made him more unpredictable and more compelling. Gone was the one-dimensional hero character, replaced by a complex figure who could be both inspiring and intimidating, capable of acts of honor and moments of ruthlessness. This evolution makes the match even more intriguing, Triple H continued. Because you have Roman, who has fully embraced being the tribal chief, who has shown he'll use every advantage and every tactic to maintain his position. And you have Drew, who has shown he's willing to meet Roman on that level, to match intensity for intensity, to do whatever is necessary. When two competitors of that caliber, with that level of commitment and that willingness to push boundaries, collide on the WrestleMania stage, you're going to get something special. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes, with Triple H fielding questions about everything from potential match stipulations to predictions about the outcome to how this fit into WWE's broader creative direction. He handled each question with the practiced ease of someone who had been in the spotlight for decades, revealing just enough to maintain interest while protecting the details that would make the story compelling as it unfolded over the coming weeks. But even as he answered questions about other topics, the significance of the main announcement continued to reverberate. Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 42. The Scottish Warrior versus the Tribal Chief. The man who had rebuilt himself from the ground up versus the man who had stood atop the mountain for years. It was the kind of matchup that transcended typical wrestling booking and became something that even casual fans and mainstream sports media would pay attention to. As the press conference concluded and Triple H stood to leave, the journalists immediately began typing furiously on laptops and phones, racing to be the first to publish the story. Within minutes, the news was everywhere. Twitter exploded with reactions from fans, from wrestlers, from celebrities. Wrestling websites crashed under the traffic surge as everyone rushed to read the details and share their thoughts. Sports shows that typically ignored wrestling were already planning segments to discuss the announcement. The WWE Universe was in a frenzy. Social media platforms became battlegrounds where fans debated who would win, who should win, how the match would play out. Drew McIntyre's name trended worldwide, as did Roman Reigns, Wrestlemenia, and various related hashtags. Fan art began appearing within hours, depicting dream scenarios and imagined moments from the match. Video packages using existing footage were created by enthusiastic fans, attempting to capture the magnitude of the upcoming confrontation. Wrestling podcasts scrambled to record emergency episodes breaking down every aspect of the announcement. Analysts dissected Triple H's exact wording, looking for hidden clues about how the story would develop. Betting odds were immediately posted, with bookmakers attempting to gauge which competitor was favored. The entire wrestling media ecosystem mobilized around this single piece of news, recognizing it as the kind of announcement that comes along rarely and demands comprehensive coverage. Within the WWE locker room, reactions were equally intense. Wrestlers who had been campaigning for their own WrestleMania moments suddenly had to recalibrate their expectations, knowing that Drew versus Roman would likely be positioned as the main event, the centerpiece around which the entire show would be built. Some expressed excitement at being part of a WrestleMania that would feature such a marquee match. Others felt the competitive sting of knowing that all eyes would be on this particular confrontation. Drew McIntyre himself took to social media hours after the announcement, posting a simple but powerful message. A photo of himself staring intensely into the camera, with a caption that read, "Destiny. WrestleMania 42. The reign ends." Hashtag swords out. The post immediately garnered hundreds of thousands of likes and tens of thousands of comments, with fans rallying behind the Scottish Warrior and expressing their belief that he would finally dethrone the Tribal Chief. Roman Reigns' response was characteristically different. Through Paul Heyman, a statement was released that dripped with the arrogance and confidence that had defined his championship reign. The Tribal Chief acknowledges Drew McIntyre's desire to step into the ring with greatness. He acknowledges Drew's journey, his perseverance, his achievements. And at WrestleMania 42, the Tribal Chief will acknowledge Drew McIntyre's loss. Roman Reigns doesn't just beat challengers. He breaks them. He ends their dreams. And Drew McIntyre, despite all his talk, despite all his bravado, will kneel before the head of the table just like everyone else. This is not a prediction. This is a spoiler. The contrasting responses perfectly encapsulated the dynamic between the two competitors. Drew's direct, passionate, personal investment in the match versus Roman's cool, calculated confidence. The challenger burning with the fire to prove himself versus the champion secure in the belief that no one could dethrone him.